I do first want to get to the White House Council of Economic Advisors. Chairman Kevin Hassett is kind enough to join us today and does so from the North Lawn of the White House. Kevin, good to see you, and thank you very much for coming on today.
On your first show, I guess.
Yeah, right. Not my first show ever, but or it could be the last one. We'll see how it turns out. Let me ask you about the president's comments about earnings reports first, then we'll move on to some other topics. It was very, very interesting, especially to those of us in this business. The president suggesting that American public companies should be reporting twice a year instead of 4 times a year. And in a White House statement, it was suggested to us that one of the reasons for this, it would ensure the U.S. economy remains the most productive in the world, which puts it right in your wheelhouse. Why would a move like this make the economy more productive?
Well, the president is focused on a laser beam on deregulation and reducing the large regulatory costs facing America's businesses. And if you look at how complicated it is to comply with all the reporting requirements, then that's a natural place for him to turn his eye. Of course, the SEC has to study the matter, and, I look forward to seeing what the report on it is. But the president's intuition is, we need, short-termism is maybe a problem in our economy, and we need to have a longer perspective. And at the same time, if we do that and reduce regulatory costs, then why not? And so, I look forward to seeing what the SEC finds when they study it, but I can see what the president's thinking.
Yeah, on that point, is that something you guys have been tossing around internally? Has he come to you for your perspective and others on it? Or
I can't talk about what we talk about. It's whether Don McGahn would like throw me in jail
but
or
on
something.
the SEC point, it does bring up an interesting question that some raised earlier, whether or not the president gave him a heads up, or whether the tweet was essentially the heads up as to this is something the White House is considering. Anything you can tell us about that?
Yeah, I don't have any information on that.
Right, whether it was that or came out first. Now, the other side of it, Kevin, and obviously you know this, and many people have brought it up today, is that those of us who kind of keep an eye on public companies wonder whether, if anything, we need more information from them rather than less information. What would you say to those who've brought that up?
Well, I think that, the accounting standards that we have in the U.S. are the gold standard of global accounting standards. In fact, way back in the day when I was in graduate school, I wrote an academic paper about how everybody should copy our accounting standards because while they're not perfect, they're better than everybody else's. And so I think that they've served a good purpose. And of course, we can always study how to make them better. But I think that our accounting standards are very high, and that's why other people have adopted them. Don't forget that even like the really, really terrible stories like Enron, and Enron was discovered by a short seller who was pouring through the public accounting statements of Enron, right? And so even though Enron was terrible, it in some sense was exposed because of our accounting standards. And so, yeah, I think that we're the gold standard still.
So those would remain in place. The point is, rather than whether it's 2 or 4 times a year. Got it. I want to ask you about trade as well while we have you here. There are a few developments and some developments that may be
some big developments.
Okay, tell us what they are then. What's the biggest development you see on the trade?
Well, I think that first of all, the European deal is moving forward. Juncker came here, and he and the president really saw eye to eye and put a lot of stuff on the table, and those talks are continuing. But the Mexican representatives have been here in town. That's been heavily covered in the media. I even met with some of them yesterday, and I think that we're very, very close to a deal with Mexico.
Yeah, we've been hearing that. I think they wrapped up this week without having anything firmly in place, right? And this so-called sunset clause on NAFTA seems to be one of the holdups.
There are a few sticking points, but there's been so much progress made that frankly, I've not been in meetings since I've been here in the White House, which is for more than a year, where reports about negotiations with other countries have been as positive as the ones with Mexico.
So you get that?
It's looking really good, But again, I guess it's like one of those things where Dustin Hoffman could show up at the wedding at I right.
Say, or at the NAFTA negotiations, which would be quite a surprise. Now you're saying next couple of days, well, I know you probably won't put an exact timetable on it, but you're getting there with Mexico, and then the idea is to move that into what? What does that open up for? What's the next step in the process?
Well, Ambassador Lighthizer will make that call, but I think that the European deal and the Mexican deal, as they become clear, should be the model for many other of our trading partners to see that the president really does have a positive reform agenda on trade. And, once we've got a couple of deals, a couple of big wins to point to, then that'll be a model for everybody else. And I think the president's view, which he's expressed to me and has said, on TV over the last year or so, is that once we get a few deals, then they're going to, basically start to snowball because everybody will copy those.
And China's the big one, obviously. Our colleagues at the Wall Street Journal have a story now saying that U.S. and Chinese negotiators are drawing up a map for talks to end their trade impasse, which leads us into next week. To the best of your knowledge, what does that map look like? What do you expect next week?
Well, I think that there are talks that have been publicly announced next week, and I think that those talks are a positive sign. I think that China has a lot of reforming to do, and we look forward to talking to them about a way to do that. And we believe that if they do reform, that it'll be good for us.
But the goal of those talks, Kevin, is what? They're fairly low level, to be fair, right?
I think that in the end, all deals start in the weeds, right, and then work their way up. And I think the fact that talks are ongoing is a really good sign.
Okay, going to end on just a broader question, if I might, on the macro economy. Your colleague Larry
my
Kudlow
favorite topic.
had some interesting. Larry Kudlow had some interesting comments yesterday as part of the cabinet meeting. I mean, he talked about China, seemed to suggest that their economy was struggling. That's the first point. Before I ask you about our economy, is that true? Do you think the Chinese economy is struggling? Gives us an upper hand in negotiations?
Yeah, Larry's right about that. I don't know how it affects negotiations, but their economy is struggling. They had something of a debt bubble over the last few years that they've been working through. Right. And if you look at their currency, it's dropped a lot. And so, yeah, there are a lot of signs of weakness in the Chinese economy right now.
And in our economy, there's many signs of strength, right? And that's the other thing, Larry.
It's exactly the opposite.
Right.
Yeah.
He was talking about the fact that he thinks the most undercovered story is kind of this boom in the economy and how it's surprised everyone. So the question to you would be about sustainability. How do we sustain, and how long can we sustain something like this current period?
Right. Well, I think that we are going to sustain it, and I think that Larry's exactly right that I think when historians look back, this is going to be a period that's very, very similar to the early Reagan years. And so don't forget, Ronald Reagan inherited a very weak economy from Jimmy Carter, and then with some very strong policy changes, he turned the economy around. Right. Well, President Trump's doing the same thing, and right now we're growing, as you saw in the most recent release, north of 4%, and we grew less than 2% in President Obama's last year. And that, I think, is not because of a sugar high, but rather because we've made sustainable reforms. And here's the best way to think about the sustainability of it. The reason why the economy is booming right now, more than anything, is that the factories are coming home, that there's a massive amount of capital formation going on. When people build a new factory, then we see it in GDP, say, in the second quarter because they bought all those machines, but then you see it in the subsequent quarters because now we have a new factory. And so this growth is absolutely sustainable. Right now, the Atlanta Fed's GDP now is calling for a third quarter north of 4%. You know, I think that, I hope that's true. Our own models say that north of 3 is looking pretty sure. And remember that 3% was impossible, according to the Obama economists, when President Trump took office. So having a 4 to 3, 2 quarters in a row, I mean, that would really be something that's a historic accomplishment.
All right, more to come on all this, of course. We thank you for your time today.
Thanks for having me.
All right, good stuff.